I think it's important to remember that practicing gratitude, thinking of the things that we're grateful for, is a symptom of a grateful mindset. And when we are truly grateful, we see blessings everywhere around us. And coming up with a list is very easy to do. And if our list is things that can be taken away from us or that we can lose, then that is also not practicing true gratitude, because true gratitude can be for life itself, can be for breath in my body, for literally anything that we have. If we cannot see, then sound is a miracle. If we cannot hear, then sight is a blessing. And we have infinite things to be grateful for in every single moment. We just don't know how to really look because we're not really feeling gratitude, and we're trying to force it by starting with those symptoms of gratitude. And sometimes starting with the symptoms can really help us to create that habit, to get us to start looking for things to be grateful for. But what we really need to do so that that becomes natural is we need to watch our things that make gratitude hard. And that is jealousy and greed. And when our cravings and desires get carried away into greed, that's when we really need to become mindful of these cravings that have gotten out of hand and start to just be where you are instead of trying to get somewhere else or get something else. To just be. When we make being present a habit, gratitude comes naturally because we are no longer creating a mindset where this moment we need to escape or something's not good enough about me or this moment. And that is the main reason we find it difficult to feel gratitude. We feel blocked and we feel we need to force it. And so simply recognizing that desire for anything in life, whether it's possessions or to be somewhere else or for something to be different. The more we accept, embrace, and love this moment, the more gratitude becomes second nature. When we are feeling unhappy, forcing ourselves to think happy thoughts is only going to remind us how unhappy we are. And we're going to feel fake, and when it doesn't work, we're going to feel like failures. So instead of trying to be happy, try to accept unhappiness. Try to love whatever emotion is there. Because that's what we need when we're unhappy. We need love. We need acceptance. We don't need someone or ourselves to force us to be happy when we are not happy. That will not make us happy. But love and acceptance is the key. And no matter what we are feeling, we can feel love about it. We can make peace with our unhappiness. And this naturally makes us happy. We focus too much as a society on the symptoms instead of the root causes. And our present moment emotions and thoughts are conditioned based on our past. And so we can't just focus on changing what is being expressed. We have to deal with the root cause. And that root cause is something in our past that we have not made peace with or accepted, and that we still have anger towards, and maybe even hatred towards. And the antidote to hate is love. We can smile to our pain, our physical pain. We can smile to our back pain or our disability. And just like we would want a best friend to be there for us, who may not always be there for us, we can be that friend. We can love those parts of us we hate the most. We can love those worst moments simply because those are the areas that need love the most, because love is the healing that will take place. Love is the power that will transform every emotion. No matter what we feel, we can accept it because it is there. And so to resist and reject what is happening is a form of insanity. And to simply accept what is happening is to embrace reality. And how we approach anything in our lives determines how we feel about everything in our lives. If we approach our unhappiness with craving and desire, we will only get further from happiness. If we approach looking at ourselves and our lives with joy and excitement and curiosity and exploration, then we have that explorer's courage and spirit and confidence that comes from exploring what we were too scared to look at, what gave us too much anger and anxiety to feel. And it is really how we respond to what happens that determines our life, never what is happening. And we always have a choice how we respond. And most of the time, we respond impulsively and unconsciously. And so we just need to spend some time with intentional space carved out in our day to look and to sit with our greatest sources of pain and actively choose to love and accept them. And that light of consciousness will outshine any darkness. To understand gratitude, we have to look at little children. They are not used to anything, and so they take nothing for granted, and everything is new and exciting. And at some point, we humans decide we've seen it all, and it's not so great. We can recognize that tendency to forget how much we love something or love someone. We can notice that new car smell wears off very quickly, and that we will get used to just about anything very quickly. And so we need to make it a daily practice to see things new every day, to never bring yesterday onto someone or something, to always be fully present, connecting with the world around us as it is, not as we labeled it yesterday. And when we actually connect with the world around us, we will find that it is amazing, and it is wonderful, and it is as incredible as every little child sees. But we can't let go of our past, of what we saw yesterday and what we expect today. But if we stay aware of that tendency, and if we notice when we are expecting too much, when we are demanding too much, when the modern conveniences that no one ever had throughout history has a slight delay, slight little glitch in our life, and we notice that anger build up and that frustration because we were so used to things working smoothly. Once we become aware of that, and once we leave our baggage so that we can be present and with everything around us, we'll notice that we are surrounded by very beautiful, cool, soft, amazing, colorful, artistic, musical things all around us. And so we just have to get out of our way. We have to put that conditioning mind out of the way. All of those other people's opinions that told us what we should like, what we shouldn't like, and we should start to notice how there is stuff to love all around us. And that is the key to developing natural gratitude, where we are naturally in awe of everything around us. We naturally can't find anything to complain about, and we are just thankful every moment. I'm just grateful that this magical universe exists with all of the illusion of separateness that we get to explore and play in for the entirety of our lives. I would say that there's a lot of different negative emotions that we have, which various positive emotions can help us with. And I think with anger, we can practice compassion. And I think with greed and jealousy, gratitude is like medicine. We cannot feel both gratitude and jealousy or greed or extreme desire while feeling gratitude. And I think that when extreme desire takes over, whether it's desire for revenge or desire for stuff, shifting our mind to a new train of thought, recognizing that it's on that negative train of thought, and switching tracks to those things that we're grateful for is a very powerful way to create a new mindset and to create new mental habits that align with our values and intentions. Gratefulness is much like a muscle in our brain. And the more we exercise it, the stronger it gets. And the easier it becomes to find those things to be grateful for. And so just making it a habit, making that a regular practice, really does transform the way we see everything in life. We go from throwing a cold coffee in the barista's face to just being happy that we're able to get a coffee in a few minutes in the middle of a city. And so whether we are screaming at someone or losing our temper, or we are reacting to negative feelings by reminding ourselves how grateful we are just to be able to afford a coffee. It's a learned reaction, and we can unlearn reactions, and we can learn new actions, new reactions, new choices. And so it doesn't have to be reacting to a difficult situation with anger. We can react to difficult situations with gratitude as naturally and effortlessly as we learned to respond with anger. And so we just make that unlearning and relearning a journey of joy, and forgive ourselves if we slip up and keep hiking up that mountain. Someone recently asked, is it okay to escape the present moment if my present moment is really bad and I don't like my life? And I get it, that it must be better to go into my video games or go into my virtual reality or escape into any show or any possible escape from a life that was not in alignment with what I intended for my life. But here's the thing. If I don't like my life, if I don't like my present moment, then I need to give that moment my undivided attention. That moment that is incompatible with what I want in life, I need to give it 100% of my time, attention, effort, and creative power to figure out how to change my situation, how to change myself if that's needed, but how to create that life. And any escape may feel good in the moment, but will take us further from that life we want. So, in these situations especially, this is the time to dig in, not run away. This is the time to build up that new skill, start that new business, to give extra at our job, or to double our extra to find a job. Whatever we are not liking, if it's finding a partner, then we double our efforts and we keep trying. Whatever about our lives that we don't like, we are all capable of changing. It may take time and it will probably take effort, but there is no one who the law of time plus effort equals results does not work for. There is no better way to create the future of our dreams than to be totally present and to give our best in every present moment. And that will create the best future present moment. It is absolutely essential that we remember to take care of ourselves, that we remember that if we are sick, we're in much more trouble. If we get burnt out, we're in much more trouble. If we don't have our mental health, we can't be there for the people that we love. And so we need some time to do two things: rest our body, rest our mind. This is how we get the energy back. Sometimes we think we need to keep going and force it, and that will translate into energy. But we know that it's the complete opposite. It's rest gives us energy. Spending energy, we need rest. And so sometimes it can be as simple as delegating. Delegating to the other people around us, asking for help from support, from our friends in our circle, and allowing ourselves. So many of us, I know, myself included, has a very hard time asking others for help. It's a very hard time communicating our needs. We don't want to put our problems on others. We don't want to burden others. And sometimes that's obviously wonderful. And sometimes our loved ones want us to communicate with them when we are overwhelmed. And so it is essential that we learn in a loving and kind way how to communicate our needs, how to tell people how they can help us. And we will usually find that people are willing to step up, people are willing to help, people love to be of service. It's only in our minds that we think, no one wants to help and no one's there for us. It's amazing what people are willing to do if we just ask. So try a little of that. Even at work, obviously, delegating is essential, and sometimes we feel it's just easier to do it myself. But the more we can train and delegate, the more mental peace we'll have, the more rest and energy we can have, and the greater our lives will be. It takes a little time up front, but these investments in time pay off in dividends. So give that a try. And then I would just say, for what I've noticed in my life, when I am feeling like I am on autopilot, I do two things. I meditate, where I can really get in just 20 minutes what feels like 8 hours sleep. And for me, that is essential. And if you're new to meditation, I recommend a mantra, like repeating Om silently in your mind, and just doing this for 20 minutes instead of a mind going all over the place, which is exhausting. We just bring it down to a mantra, that one word where there is no thought. It's more like we're humming, and that ability to lock onto a sound like Om, which we don't have to think about any meaning. It's just a sound that serves as essentially a net for capturing our mind and just letting it sit still. And this can be more restorative than even sleep, because in sleep our minds are very active, and this provides a different and essential type of rest. And it is most essential for people who are constantly thinking, constantly multitasking, and having a hard time letting their mind rest. So give that a try as well. And if it is available to you, try shaking things up a bit. Try scheduling in some time to lay at the park or go to the beach or do whatever it is for you. It could be knitting, it could be, your favorite activity, drawing or spending time with friends. Whatever it is, these are not selfish. And when we are overworked, this is the most essential thing we can do for ourselves, is force ourselves sometimes to take that break and not feel guilty about it. And that is the most important thing. So give those two things a try, meditation and shaking things up. Shaking things up is a great way to shake us out of our funk. So give that a try and let me know how that works for you. And just the more present that we are, the more mindful we are, the more we make conscious choices in the present moment, not based on habitual thinking, where we keep going in the same sorts of cycles over and over again. And we're able to make new choices that serve us in the long run. And that's what's most essential. There is a great quote by Albert Einstein that goes, "We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking we had when we created them." And for a brilliant mathematician and physicist, he was also brilliantly astute at noticing that we have a level of consciousness, both as a person, an individual, and as a collective consciousness, as all humanity. And he could see how that level of consciousness evolves and how it has been evolving. And also he can see how we get stuck in old ways of thinking that prevent us from evolving our consciousness. And the way we evolve our consciousness is we have to break that pattern and habit of thinking. We all have a habit of thinking. For example, we can either go through life forgiving everyone and loving everyone and letting everything just brush off our shoulders and nothing affect us. And then we can have a terrible catastrophe in our life, something horrible, some terrible tragedy or loss, and it can turn us bitter, and we can lose that old habit, and we can revert back to a lower level of consciousness, and we can be mad at everyone and bitter and just angry at the world and feel that kind of ego boost, but underlying it is actually misery and suffering. But when we criticize others, and it gives us that boost of feeling righteous and superior to someone else, but it is all to mask a deep suffering and insecurity. And so the way to break any habit of thought is to break thought and to practice mindfulness, to become as present as possible, to take any moment as an opportunity to become aware of our breath. The more we consciously change our thinking from unintentional, unconscious, negative, incessant, repetitive thinking, that usual mode of thinking that most humans live in, we need to bring conscious awareness, intentionality, and the peacefulness of presence, because that will naturally make our thoughts positive. It's a very natural question to wonder, where is that line between oversharing, bringing people down with my problems, and closing myself off, shutting down, and withdrawing from others? Because we want that connection, we want that oneness, we want that shared experience, and yet we don't want to burden others with our negative emotions. The thing is, when we are talking with others, healing is a natural byproduct from sharing our worries and fears with others. And it is so important that we have someone we can do that with. It is the most human aspect of who we are, is this need to share and connect. When we are sharing, we must also be mindful. We must be mindful of the other person's feelings, of what we are unloading and sharing. And we want to make sure that we're not using or abusing or taking advantage of other people's kindness. We don't want to bring them down, but we also don't want to feel alone. And so when we stay mindful of the situation and other people's feelings and their energy, are they checking the clock constantly? These are things that can only happen when we are fully present and mindful. When we are consumed by our story, we may be just unloading immense negativity on a person to make ourselves feel better at their expense. And so there must be a mutual healing. And we do this simply by noticing, am I using this person, or has this person invited me to unload? And we will, as we become more mindful, as we practice meditation more, as we make every experience in our lives a meditative practice of mindfulness and being present, it becomes second nature, and we will feel more comfortable and natural sharing with others because there is no more insecurity, because we are fully present and we are aware that our energy is being received and reciprocated. And the most beautiful thing is that the more we practice presence and mindfulness, the less negative stuff from our past weighs on our shoulders, because we have made a practice of moving with time, letting go of the past, not clinging to anything that happens, and just in the flow of time. So it is a incredible two-step factor when we practice mindfulness. We get the ability to recognize, am I draining someone? Am I making someone miserable? Or am I having a mutual sharing of space with someone that is mutually beneficial, that is healing for both of us? And this is what we can do when we become less selfless, or more selfless, less selfish, and we become more focused on others. The more present we become, the more selfless we become, the less all of our fears, worries, and problems seem to be. So it is really like expanding our consciousness beyond this tunnel vision we used to be feeling towards our problems. So it used to be our problems took up our entire vision. And as we expand our consciousness, as we become more present in the here and peaceful now, we can see how easy it is to let go of the past. And we don't need others to take on our baggage and our negative energy for us anymore. And we can do it ourselves. But that healing connection between two life forms is immense. So I 100% hope and recommend that everyone finds someone who they can talk to, who is in a space like them, curious and on a journey themselves, who is interested in more than small talk and chit-chatting about the weather. And we can really have a blossoming of our life to experience. Life only gets out of control when the doing is out of balance with the being. And so when we are constantly doing, constantly receiving a bombardment of information and messages from society, from advertising to social media to the friends and family we are surrounded with, we are always being bombarded with trillions of informational data points that the brain processes and creates a model of the universe around us. If we don't spend an adequate amount of time processing that information, digesting it, releasing certain negative emotions that were caused, then we will feel like our lives are out of control, chaotic, disorganized, and we can feel like the ground has been pulled out from under us. If we, for example, are constantly doing activities, constantly doing things, not giving ourselves enough introspection, reflection, then we may only notice the effect our behavior has on us in the moment, but not in the future. And so we may eat garbage and feel like garbage, but we might not connect the two, because when we eat the garbage, at that moment, we feel a rush of pleasure. We don't feel the sickness that comes 20, 30 minutes later. And this is true with every aspect of our lives. If we don't notice how something is making us feel, how something is affecting our lives, how something is affecting the people we love around us, then we will be lost in ignorance, and we will create a life that is directionless, unpredictable, and that will be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to achieve any dreams, any goals. Once we invite that space into our lives, immediately that overwhelmed feeling disappears, because there's space to breathe. My body can relax. I was in a heightened state of chronic stress, and finally there is a moment to breathe. Because when we are being bombarded with information, our minds are going in overdrive to process that. And if it doesn't have some space to do that, it will do it in a very hurried, impatient way. And it will not be effective, and it will make us more impatient and more miserable. For a lot of people who have been living 100% of their lives doing something, which is most people, those first few weeks of inviting that space will feel like torture. It will feel like 1 minute is 20 minutes. And this is okay. In fact, this is wonderful. This is the undoing of doing. And this is the beginning of being. And this fully changes our lives, because we go from a place of chronic stress, a place of chaos, to a place of wise reflection, so that we know in each moment what our actions will do for us now and in the future. And in doing so, we begin to have a future that we are creating and shaping, instead of unconsciously making through unskilled and ignorant choices. Now, I don't mean ignorant as an insult, simply meaning a lack of understanding and a lack of deep wisdom in what we're doing. So, whether it is doing anything that helps us get out of our head and helps us be present is very useful. And it is a great transition to going beyond that and doing actually nothing and really letting our brain reflect. But at first, it can be a walk, a jog, swimming laps, exercise, anything that you do where you can take out the headphones and just be. You can still be running or walking, but take off the headphones. Or you can be doing anything that really forces us out of that normal thinking mode. The more we do, the better. So that's also art and creativity, performing on stage, these moments of heightened presence that force us to be aware and alert for at least a short period of time. And then the second phase, which we can start right away in small amounts, is meditation, yoga, and even just sipping tea with no distractions by yourself for 5 or 10 minutes. And this is really the way that we change the way our mind works fundamentally in the long term. So swimming is great, but it doesn't train our mind to act differently after the swimming. And so that's why these meditative activities are incredible and they're worth, doing, and they make life worth living. But once we get into meditation, the real nothing, then we are not focusing on balance and moving our legs and arms just so and avoiding cars or bumping into things. And we are putting our full attention inward, and we are giving ourselves that much needed wisdom to understand why our life is the way we are, what choices we made to get here, what we want our future to look like, and what choices can we make to get there. And all it takes is a little bit of time, thoughtful thinking, planning, reflecting, and introspection, and we can all create a life that is both busy and thrilling, while simultaneously inner peace, inner calm, and inner stillness. And that is the goal we can all do, so that we have a balance of being with doing. We, deep down, know what's best for us in the moment. The problem is that ego comes into our awareness with a really bad idea. And it may really try to sell that idea as really great and necessary, and it'll use phrases like, it'll be fine, you deserve it. It'll boost itself to manipulate us in order to do its bidding, which tends to be present moment instant gratification. The ego is impatient, fearful, and always needing to be entertained, stimulated. It's that inner child, really. So when we have a moment of that bad idea, that sabotage, that voice that says, don't worry about that work you have to do tonight, go to the bar instead, or any of the million bad ideas that we all get from our egos. We need to practice staying present, staying mindful, mostly staying watchful and alert, because that enemy can come from within. And so we have to really make a commitment to practicing staying present. And the more emotions try to sweep us away, the more that we are getting lost in those really heavy emotions or down a train of thoughts that is almost impossible to get off of. The more we develop that ability to sit with a thought, sit with an idea, sit with a craving, we are allowing space for our highest wisdom, our greatest good, and our deepest intention to come forth. But it needs those moments of calm and quiet, because as we all know, the ego is really great at chatting our ears off and never taking a break, so that we don't have a moment to reflect and that we don't have a moment to really ground ourselves, center ourselves, and make a decision that is in line with our true selves. We need to practice both staying present and not acting on every impulsive thought. And the second thing that we can do is learn to distinguish between cravings, impulse, desire, and what is coming from our heart. What do we know to be true? Where there is no debate, there is no should I or shouldn't I, there is just this deep knowing. And that is that heart intuition. And it really is more than a metaphor, because we do have these neurons, these almost brain neurons in our heart. So there is an intelligence connecting between our heart and our head. But also when we feel something strongly from the heart, we often put our hands on the heart. And it's just a subtle way that our subconscious communicates with us. Similarly, when we are debating, when we are thinking about whether we should do something or not, when we're weighing an impulse and we know the right thing to do, but that ego wants to be satisfied. And so we often point to our head, and we'll, look up here, we'll point to our mind, and it's just another subtle way. Similarly, we lead with the gut when we feel a gut instinct, a drive. We don't know where it's coming from, and we walk with our stomachs protruding more forward. But when there is fear, when there is debate, inner conflict, these are all what we know to be true, and the ego is coming up with reasons not to do it. And so sometimes there may be needing to be a thought process. There isn't a clear right or wrong, ethically speaking. And other times, we know right away what to do, but then our mind tries to convince us otherwise. So it's essential to really feel where these decisions and ideas are coming from. Are they coming from fear? Are they coming from scarcity? Are they coming from anger and hatred, or to make someone jealous? Or is it coming from a place of lightness and positivity, where there is only this joy that we want to share with the world, or something is wrong and we know we have to correct it? So in these situations, when there is that clear pull, we can start to practice learning to trust that center, that heart center within us, and to be a little more skeptical of these impulses. And the more we do this, the more in line our entire lives become. Our thoughts, words, actions, choices, and habits all aligning to what we know to be our greatest good. And in so doing, eventually that ego gets satisfied, but it has to struggle a little bit. It has to suffer. It has to be denied And then, like a child who has developed great habits, hopefully it will thank its parents later. Human beings are social. We're social creatures. We thrive with close connections, and it is because we needed each other to survive. And so we are naturally drawn to those close bonds that make us feel safe. Sometimes when we have felt unsafe, we may use friends and pets and other devices for feeling that sense of safety again. And there is nothing wrong with using these incredible tools of love and connection to lift us up. The fact that I was recently reached out to and asked about whether or not that's okay, there is a underlying insecurity, unhappiness, and loneliness going on that is causing this behavior. And if we have a service pet, there is nothing that I'm saying here to indicate that you need to wean off or you need to go cold turkey or make any changes whatsoever. This is only if you feel like you're using companionship as a crutch and that you are noticing that neediness within you and that it is causing suffering. And so in these instances, we can start to develop again that sense of safety within. We can heal whatever trauma we experienced, and we may find naturally that we no longer need companionship all the time. And that is the goal, really, is just to not have companionship, not to push all our friends and loved ones away, but simply to be okay with and without, to accept those incredible social gatherings and to accept when they're over and to feel comfortable in our skin, whether we're surrounded by people, whether we're surrounded by strangers, or whether we're alone. And the way we do that is first noticing what arises, noticing those nervous, anxious feelings and sensations within, and really being present with them, really experiencing them, and in doing so, they become familiar and that discomfort becomes comfortable. And that is super important because really what anxiety is a certain heightened elevation, that higher blood pressure, that elevated heart rate, that, vibrating kind of shaking sensation in the body, maybe a higher body temperature, and it is accompanied with anxious thoughts. So when we recognize that all it is certain physical changes in the body that are not unbearable, they're not immense pain, they're just these subtle, uncomfortable feelings, as we notice that the thoughts don't control us, they don't dictate our lives, they don't dictate our feelings, that we are a witness to these emotions, then we become intimately familiar with that sensation, with the trigger, with the trauma from the past that it brings up. And the more we get comfortable, the more we feel safe and secure, because if it's discomfort that we are resisting, then by allowing that discomfort to be, by becoming intimately familiar with it, it is no longer this scary foreign enemy. It is quite simply a small part of our field of consciousness. And that field of consciousness includes our thoughts, our emotions, our bodily sensations, and everything that is happening all around us. And everything that is happening is equally important. It is only when we put our entire focus on those thoughts that we lose ourselves from our reality. And when we lose ourselves, we feel ungrounded, uncentered, out of balance. And that is often when we turn to some sort of crutch. And in this case, it's companionship, but it can be drugs and alcohol. It can be whatever bad habit, comfort food, whatever we normally turn to as a crutch to relieve those uncomfortable emotions. We can sit with them and they can become comfortable simply by becoming more familiar with them. And this is a healthy way to create inner strength so that we can handle every situation, because we are generating that ability to sit with our fears and discomforts. Anytime that pain or trauma comes over us, our awareness and focus shrinks to practically being aware of nothing else but our thoughts. And we become completely taken over by those thoughts, by the conditioned ego from the past that we cannot let go of. And this is why we do things in these states that we have no awareness of, that we would never do when we're calm and collected with our highest wisdom. And so the more we practice as heavy thoughts and emotions take over, the more we just become aware of those thoughts, the more we let go of the power of those thoughts, the more we feel we don't need to follow that train of thought, then we are able to stay present and centered. And we need to remember that we are no longer on high alert, that we can relax our full body. And when we can have that intelligence come into a moment when we are being swept away, we prevent that negative stream of thought, that downward spiral with an inescapable gravity like a black hole. And we are able to come back and just remember those are thoughts and not a big deal. And truly, thoughts aren't a big deal. These are thinking machines in our brains, and they will think anything that will pop into its head, just the randomest, craziest stuff. And we never need to get so absorbed by those thoughts. And we often get tricked. We often believe this is very important, what I'm thinking about. And usually it's not that important, because We are just ants on an anthill building our cities, and rarely do we humans consider the thoughts and feelings and emotions of each individual ant. And so we can slowly shift to recognize that those thoughts, our cravings, our desires, our pleasures, and our pains aren't such a big deal. And when we have that humbling insight, we're much easier able to let go of any thoughts that come into our field of awareness, and especially those traumatic memories.